Let's discuss the roles of minerals in bone formation. We have 200 bones, over 200 bones in the body, and we need bones for skeletal support, for movement, and the protection of vital organs. We have hearts, brain. In order to protect them, we need bones to protect those vital organs. And we need bones to maintain the mineral homeostasis and acid-base balance. We will talk about these roles in detail later in this chapter. There are 8 minerals involved in bone formation and health, but among those 8 minerals, calcium and phosphorus are the most important ones. 80 to 90% of the minerals we have in the bone are calcium and phosphorus. And there are two types of bones. Cortical bones are found in the shafts of the long bones and on the surface of the bones, which makes 80% of our skeleton. Another type of bone is trabecular bone. Trabecular bone found at the ends of the long bones and below the surface. So there are two types of bones. And our bone has three key processes: growth, modeling, and remodeling. Bone growth occurs in both length, longitudinal, and thickness, radial, especially in children and adolescents. Modeling, it refers to reshape of bones in response to mechanical forces from weight bearing and muscle activity. Most active, this process is most active during childhood and adolescence. The bone process we see majority of the time in adulthood is remodeling. This is a dominant process in adults. It replaces micro-damaged old bone with new bone to maintain strength. Bone remodeling, which happens in adults, regulate mineral metabolism, such as maintaining proper blood calcium levels. Here we have some important notes. Calciteriol. Calciteriol is vitamin D, the active form of vitamin D. Calciteriol increases calcium absorption in the intestines. Osteoblast. There are two main types of bone cells: osteoblasts and osteoclasts. Osteoblasts are the cells responsible for forming bones. Osteoclasts are the cells responsible for resorbing bone, for breaking down of bone. And we have a hormone, it's called parathyroid hormone. Parathyroid hormone is released from parathyroid glands. As you know, there are four tiny glands just behind the thyroid gland, and those four tiny parathyroid glands, they produce and secrete a hormone called PTH, or parathyroid hormone. This hormone is responsible for controlling calcium homeostasis. We need this hormone for controlling proper or optimal blood levels of calcium. There are different factors that can affect peak bone mass. So peak bone mass, or peak mineral density, PMD or PBM, refers to the highest bone mineral density achieved during one's lifetime. So there are different factors affecting this peak mineral density or peak bone mass. Genetic factors, nutritional factors like calcium, vitamin D, protein, and total energy intake through diet. There are some endocrine factors like different hormones, IGF-1, estrogen, or mechanical factors like body weight, physical activity, weight bearing, and strength exercise. These different factors influence peak bone mass or peak mineral density. The largest amount of bone mineral is added during childhood and adolescence. This is a very important point to remember. The largest amount of bone mineral is added during childhood and adolescence because bone growth and bone modeling occurs in childhood and adolescence. Uh, Bone remodeling occurs in adulthood. By the end of adolescence, 95% of the adult skeleton has been formed. After that, only remodeling occurs. People who are physically active, they have greater bone mineral density than people who are inactive, who are physically inactive, you know. And there are some exercise-related factors affect the peak bone density or peak bone mass, the type of exercise, the intensity of the exercise, frequency of exercise, age at which the activity is begun, number of years that the exercise continues. So these factors also affects peak bone density. And these exercise-related factors are part of these mechanical factors on this picture. In young adults, high impact activities and strength training like power lifting produce the largest increase in bone mineral density. Weight bearing exercise at above 60% of VO2 max is more effective for improving bone mineral density than weight-bearing activities done at lower intensities. And also remember, weight-bearing exercise, strength exercise, they are more effective than other types of exercise like endurance exercise in achieving the greater bone mineral density or peak bone mass, peak bone density during childhood, adolescence, and adulthood. Non-weight bearing exercise like cycling, swimming, they improve cardiovascular fitness but do not increase bone mineral density because they are not imposing mechanical force on the bones. That's the reason. Athletes usually have higher BMD, bone mineral density, than inactive people. And among athletes, distance runners, cyclists, and swimmers, they often have lower bone mineral density than athletes in other sports like weight bearing exercise, strength exercise. Cycling and swimming are non-weight bearing exercise type, which helps explain their lower bone mineral density, which is obvious, you know. And many distance runners, like long distance runners, marathon runners, they show low bone mineral density because of low energy availability. They expend more energy compared to their energy intake or caloric intake. That's why they develop low bone mineral density. Even with weight-bearing training, those with low BMI and low body weight can have reduced BMI. So remember having an optimal levels of BMI or an optimal body weight, they will help bone mineral density. And this is calcium regulation. And as you can see, calcium homeostasis or calcium metabolism, calcium regulation, there are different terms. They all refer to calcium regulation. So whenever you see calcium homeostasis, calcium metabolism, calcium regulation, these are all referring to the same concept. So here we have GI tract, gastrointestinal tract, which we absorb calcium. And we have bloodstream, which we carry calcium. Remember, calcium cannot be uh, transferred freely in the bloodstream. We need a carrier for calcium. Most of the time, it's albumin. Albumin is a protein made by the liver, and it carries calcium in the bloodstream. So different factors, different hormones like vitamin D, um, parathyroid hormone, they affect, they regulate calcium homeostasis. Bones also regulates calcium level. So calcium homeostasis and balance are complex and involve the GI tract, bones, kidneys, and blood. And we have two influential hormones, which are PTH and calcitriol, which is vitamin D. So let's pause here for a second and talk about this picture. So when we have low calcium levels in the blood, calcitriol, which is a form of vitamin D, it's the active form of vitamin D. It acts on GI tract and it increases calcium absorption. We get calcitriol, the active form of vitamin D, in kidneys. So this calcitriol increases the absorption of calcium from GI tract, as well as PTH, parathyroid hormone. When we have low calcium levels in the bloodstream, PTH increases bone breakdown and it releases calcium to the bloodstream in order to have the optimal levels of calcium. Optimal levels of calcium is very crucial and it's very important. Any changes in blood levels of calcium can cause dire consequences like heart attack, heart arrest, and some other harmful problems, serious issues. So we need to have an optimal levels of calcium in the bloodstream. PTH increases bone breakdown, releases calcium to the bloodstream in order to have an optimal levels of calcium in the bloodstream. In the kidneys, PTH also activates vitamin D. It converts vitamin D from inactive form to active form, which is calcitriol. PTH also acts on kidneys. It increases calcium reabsorption in kidneys. So this, as you can see, this is complex, different hormones, vitamin D, PTH. They act on different tissues and organs in order to increase the blood levels of calcium in the bloodstream. And we have dietary reference intake for calcium and vitamin D. Remember, you don't need to remember and memorize these numbers. That's just this is for your information. And here at the bottom of the table, there's an important point. Between the ages of 9 and 18, recommended calcium intake is at the highest recommended. It is at its highest, and recommended intakes remain relatively high throughout the life cycle. So we have calcium in milligram per day and vitamin D in international unit per day for different age groups. We need minerals in blood formation. The most important example is iron and hemoglobin. Remember, hemoglobin is a protein in red blood cells, and hemoglobin has four protein chain. We have alpha chain and beta chain. And each of those chains, we have four protein chains. Each of those chains include a molecule called heme. At the center of the heme, we have iron atoms. And those iron atoms links to oxygen. They attaches to oxygen, and that's way we carry oxygen in the bloodstream from lungs to tissues. And also iron can attach to carbon dioxide, and in that way we carry out um, carbon dioxide from tissues to lungs in order to breathe out carbon dioxide. So hemoglobin found in the red blood cells that can bind oxygen, and it consists of four polypeptide chains. Polypeptide means proteins. And at the center of the heme portion of the molecule is iron. Iron is in each heme molecule forms six bonds, four with nitrogen, one with globin, which is a protein chain, and one with oxygen. And that way we carry uh, oxygen and carbon dioxide in the bloodstream. There are some nutritional anemias and non-nutritional anemias. Anemia means uh, the general term anemia means a reduced oxygen carrying capacity. So when we say anemia, it means reduced oxygen carrying capacity. And we can categorize anemia into two different groups. We can categorize anemia as nutritional anemias and non-nutritional anemias. So nutritional anemias, as you can say from the name, it means nutrition related anemias like iron deficiency anemia, vitamin B12 deficiency anemia, folate deficiency anemia, and so on and so forth. And non-nutritional anemias are not nutrition related anemias. We have aplastic anemia, hemolytic anemia, sickle cell anemia, and there are other types of anemias. So we have different types of anemias. They can be nutritional or non-nutritional. We can measure anemia. We can measure iron-related anemia using different blood tests. So this table summarizes iron-related blood tests in order to determine iron deficiency anemia. So iron deficiency anemia is a type of nutritional anemia, which related to iron deficiency. So we can measure hemoglobin, ferritin, transferrin, serum iron, soluble transferrin receptor, transferrin saturation, total iron binding capacity, and so on and so forth. Among these iron-related blood tests, hemoglobin, ferritin, and transferrin, these are the most important ones. And hematocrit is also very important in order to determine, uh, diagnose actually, uh, iron deficiency anemia. There's another term called dilutional anemia. Dilutional anemia is a slightly decreased hemoglobin value is due to plasma volume expansion associated with endurance training. So dilutional anemia is not anemia. It's kind of a fake anemia. It's not an actual anemia. That's why it's called dilutional anemia. So we have a slightly decreased hemoglobin levels and values in the blood test because of the plasma volume expansion. And it occurs with endurance training, like distance running, cycling, swimming. The prevalence of IDA, iron deficiency anemia, it ranges between 30 to 50% among athletes, which is high. And the prevalence of IDA in high volume endurance training, such as distance running and rowing, and those with eating disorders are even higher compared to other groups of athletes. And IDA, iron deficiency anemia, impairs performance because it can cause fatigue, um, and other, symptoms, which impairs exercise performance. And VO2 max, which is aerobic capacity, declines with iron deficiency anemia. There are different factors affect iron status in athletes, like their sex, age, medications, because we have, food drug interactions, and their diet, low calorie intake, lower absent animal protein intake, high intake of iron inhibitors like phytic acid, oxalate, um, those like inhibitors which are naturally found in foods. And also we have exercise induced hemolysis, which I explained in the previous lecture video. Other minerals have other roles in the immune system, for instance, um, zinc, magnesium, and selenium, they help our immune system. And also immune system are impaired by excessive intake of zinc or iron. Um, but in order to have an optimal levels of immune system, uh, we need to have adequate protein and total energy intakes. So this slide summarizes the deficiency of different minerals and their impact on immune system. I'm gonna leave this slide to you to read and to review. This is the last and the most important note and point of this chapter. Consuming a nutritious diet, a nutrient-dense diet, contains adequate energy and a variety of foods from different food groups like grains, proteins, vegetables, fruits. If we have adequate intake of energy, if we have adequate intake of protein, and if we have a wide variety of food intake, we will not develop mineral deficiency, even if we are engaging in high intensity exercise. So this is all about this chapter.